So welcome to part 3 of the into the custom character into UDK. As you can see, we have our character here all skinned and all rigged up with our gizmos to make it easier for us. So now it's on to the animating part. What we need to make sure in here in animating is I'm just using a 0 to 100 time frame. I haven't adjusted this anyway, I'm just using the default settings. The more you dabble into animation, the more you want to play around with stuff, but I'm going to show you just some really basic stuff. So let's begin animating. First thing we need to do with cat rigging, as it's done slightly different, we need to make sure we select the cat parent, which is the panel at the bottom of the character. And then once we have that selected, if we go to the right hand side and go to the motion panel, you'll be presented with this little box here. This is basically the animation layers that contains inside cat rigging. And this is where we put all the layers we are going to be working on. So we have add layer button here. And what we're going to do is click ABS, which is animation layer. We can change the name of this layer here. So we're going to change this to idle. Once we've done that, we can't just animate, we have to make sure that we click this big red stop button here so it goes green. We need to make sure that's green before we animate, because that tells it that we're going to animate on that layer. And then we need to click the auto key button right at the bottom here, so the frame goes red around max. Once that goes red, you know you're in animation. Making sure I'm on frame 0, I'm going to adjust this to a pose that I want it to start off. So it's going to be an idle pose. So let's just get a basic one here. I'm not going to take time on these animations, and I'm not going to worry too much about what they look like, because the purpose of this tutorial is not to teach you how to animate, just to show you the basics of animation inside cat rigging. My gizmos, as you can see, are making this a lot easier for me. I am happy with the starting pose. So what I need to do now is I need to make sure I drag and select my whole model. So everything's selected, but I need to deselect my cat parent at the bottom here. Once it's selected, I need to go over here to this big key looking thing and click it. That's just basically created a keyframe for my whole model there. So that is keyed at frame 0 now. Now I need to copy my frame 0 by selecting it in the timeline so it goes white. If I hold shift and drag off and drag it to frame 100, that'll paste that exact same animation there. So what happened is we'll have a perfectly looped animation. So now we need to add some in between some other poses. So I'm going to move this to frame 30. I'm going to move the hips down here. Gonna rotate him around. Just put him in a really silly pose. That's looking a bit silly now. Oh, don't want to turn the arm too far there. Just move his arm around here. Move it in here. My gizmos make this a lot easier to animate. We want to make sure we avoid the meshes crunching too much when we're pulling our poses in. And we're going to just adjust this arm as well. Move this in. So let's make it look like doing something on its back wrist. Adjust his wrist there. Just move his head down here. His hips and that look a bit weird, so I'm going to straighten this up. And I'm also going to move it up. He's crouching a bit too much. So about there. So let's move the cape to make it look like it's getting affected by the wind. If I move my timeline across, you can see the animation playing. Where we have a copy of frame 0 on frame 100, it'll go back to the pose we had at the beginning, which will perfectly loop it. So let's add another pose in here. Let's drop it to frame 50, and we'll copy our last frame there because we don't want him moving instantly. We want him to just stay there static, and then at frame 50 we want him to move. So he's going to tilt his head to the side. You move the slider in, you can see him, his head is just moving to the side there. And he's coming down. Anything we move on the mesh will instantly get animated with the auto key on. So the cape's going to flop a bit here. We'll keep moving our slider in to see how the animation's blending. If I hit the play button down in the bottom right, it'll play the animation on a loop. So we're just going to call this done for idle. We're not going to go too into depth. If I select my cat parent here and go back over to the motion panel, if you notice, if I click the play button on and off, he goes back from his pose to his idle one. But if I keep the play button on and double click the idle layer, it basically disable the animation and go into this funny pose. So you have to watch out for that. So now it's time to add another animation. We want to add a run. But I'm going to show you another technique inside cat rigging that works. It's basic motion layers, and you can record animation layers and actually re-import them via motion layer. I'm going to add a new layer by holding the layer button, and at the bottom there should be a little man. We click that, that's a cat motion layer. You should see a little green paw. We click that, we get the options. So we're going to go two legged, game character run. Double click and load into existing layer and click load. You'll notice our character change. If we hit the play button, you'll notice him running. So this is a generic run animation that cat motion comes with. You can adjust it inside the settings, but for the purpose of this tutorial we're going to keep it simple and just keep this animation on. And we're going to change the name of the motion to run. Another great thing about cat rigging is where it works in animation layers, you can blend animations together inside the animation. So we're going to make one for the cape. So if we hold the button with the layer and add +W, which is an animation world layer. This will make adjustments within the world space of our animation. So with the play button selected and the auto key button on, so it's all a red frame, we're just going to do some quick poses on our cape to be affected like the run. So we'll just move it into where we want it. As you can see, it's setting keyframes every time we move the cape. Just paste this in here so it moves a bit slow. Let's move this one up here. If you remember me saying earlier, this cape is not really modelled in a way that animates very nicely. So it's very jaggedy and won't animate like proper cloth. So I'll move this here. Move that up. So there you go, it's doing a little flop. To save time on this tutorial, as you get the general idea, we're just going to select all these keyframes, just paste them up. Obviously you would spend more time on this type of job. The two layers in the animation are blending. If I turn off adjustment world, you'll notice the cape will go back to what it originally was. It's always good to name your animation layers, so rather than have adjustment world layer, I'm going to rename this to cape run so I know what this is doing. With that done, we have our two animations on. I'm not going to demonstrate any more animations because these will do for the purpose of the tutorial. And on the next part, I will show you how to export your model with its animations out into the correct package setup for UDK